Welcome to another edition of the Wonderberry Podcast.
I'm Brian,
I'm Dave.
and you can find us online at wonderberry.com.
You can find me online at Open Darkwing.
And you can find me hanging out in a tech support chat.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Been trying to help a client set up a website, and then I had an issue, and now I've been in a tech support chat for like an hour. Haven't gotten anywhere, but they're working on it. We decided to record anyways, so I'm just hanging out in the chat. They have all their information. Hopefully they just fix it, say, okay, it's done, and then I can say thank you and close the chat, and then be on par, on team.
Yeah, it's
I
not like I don't do anything else while we're recording, so.
Yeah. I actually had a phone call from a listener yesterday, who I think the phone call started, he called, and I think last week we started with asking for applications for both an intern and a pool boy. But, I asked for, a tan pool boy with like a 6-pack abs, and I'm not really strict on my qualifications. So he called and said, hey, I have 6-pack abs, but I don't have a tan. And I said, well, I have a tan and I have a pony keg. So he also has a pool. So I think we're going to swap. I'm going to be his pool boy. I have the tan and I have no 6-pack abs, and has 6-pack abs and no tan. So I think the two of us will make a good team. We'll be each other's pool boys. We still don't have an intern.
Of course not.
But
Why would we want an intern?
because we're like 800 episodes in. We've never missed a week ever in the history of Wonderberry, and
or a couple of years.
that I remember, and we're always on task, and we
have an entire doc where we have all of our topics carefully molded and knowing what we want to do.
But anyways, in the phone call, he did mention how sometimes we do seem like sidetracked with what we're doing during the episode. I did mention like we do.
Did you tell him that we do this off the cuff?
No, but I think that's pretty fucking obvious, Dave.
I mean,
We're slowly
turning into a podcast that just talks about social media.
we do really talk about it a lot. Well, it's kind of interesting because that's kind of in the news a lot, and there's a lot going on with it because that's kind of what's shaping the world right now.
It's topical tech dad podcast.
Yeah, it's what all of the kids are using, and we have kids, so we got to know what's going on with the social medias and where it's kind of headed, because that's what our kids are going to be doing, so we have to understand it. So
I did get something yesterday. I haven't set it up yet, but I finally got myself a YubiKey.
what? Well, what?
It's a hardware two-factor authentication thing. So it's for better security instead of using just something software-wise for any authentication practices or anything else. It's an actual hardware device that will do all that for me. And it has NFC capability, which means I can tap it to the phone or I can plug it into a USB. And I can throw on like my GPG credentials and all sorts of stuff attached to it as well, so that anywhere I'm at, I can access my other shit securely.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice.
Nice.
I mean, it's going to be nice once it's all set up and running. I haven't set it up yet. I got it Amazon yesterday, and I didn't have time last night because I was learning Docker finally. I did realize something. I've gotten lazy, especially when it comes to website hosting. I have been relying on shared hosting places that have like all sorts of automation and everything else with it for so long that tech has changed and software has changed a lot in the last 2 decades.
Mm-hmm. The cPanel looks nice now.
Well, yeah, I mean, and cPanel's awesome, but right now I've got a server that I'm going to be putting together to replace my cPanel powered stuff, and I'm like, okay, I have to relearn how I do all this. I mean, I kind of know what I'm doing now, but you set up a reverse proxy and then you just spin up Docker containers for
Mm-hmm.
each site or each app or program or whatever you're running.
Yeah.
And then you use, I think I'm going to use Nginx as a reverse proxy. It seems to be the easiest.
Yeah. I just I'm just paying somebody to do that now.
Yeah, I got tired of paying someone to do it for what I was using it for. I got tired of that and the limitations. Being able to spin up a Docker container means that I can run my and host my own Mastodon instance for example.
Yeah.
And I don't have to sit there and rely. And the other thing that I was running into with the shared environment was having different applications for different websites that I have that require different versions or different things to be unlocked or locked or enabled or disabled in PHP that conflicts with other things.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I made some changes to so I was going to check out that Hubzilla thing, but the changes that I had to make with the PHP, you can't just do it for each individual site because it's all one shared instance. It's site wide because of how they run the multiple hosts and everything else. It ended up breaking every one of my WordPress instances.
Hmm.
And it took me a day to figure that out. So I guess that's when I made the decision. Okay, if I want to do this and I want to do it right, I need to make sure that you know I do it right,
Yeah.
and I have to start from scratch,
Hmm.
which isn't terrible, I guess.
Yeah. I know with my hosting, I can set a separate PHP instance for like each, I got like each different site set up.
Yeah. Well, I figured that instead of just having everything installed for everything all the time, I can, I'll just, each Docker container can just have only specifically what it needs and what it doesn't need. And it'll be nice and easy and streamlined. I mean, it's not that bad. It was just relearning how to look at a website and how to look at management and the server side and go, okay, there's a lot of shit that I don't know.
Yeah. That's
I
that was
am
kind of what I was doing was I was kind of looking at things like, man, there's so much stuff has changed and there's so
well,
much I don't want to learn anymore.
yeah, I'm 20 years behind the curve right now.
Yeah.
I'm learning 20 years of domain server and web server management in days.
Yeah. That's exactly why I'm in the tech support call. I probably could have picked around and figured out how to fix this on my own, but I was like, this stuff I haven't worked on in 15 years or so.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
I'm actually looking
These
forward to doing it because
these
it's going to give me a lot more flexibility with what I want to do. I'm not shoehorned in anymore.
well, these I was like, these people do this. I want to just get back into designing this client's website. I want to. That's where I make my. I'm not making money on trying to fix why this editor is just giving me a plain white screen. And not, you know, that's not making me money right now. That's holding up where my money is. So I'm gonna let them fix it. I'm paying them money to make that work right. So
Yep.
they can fix that. I make money on editing the website. I need to get back to that. I'll let them fix that. I'll record a podcast with you. That's my justification
Well,
for
and
doing
sometimes
this.
that's why they do have that. Is when you can't when you can't do it yourself, they're there to help. I just like to have the option, like being able to install a Mastodon instance and utilize Open Darkwing for a Mastodon instance eventually.
Yeah.
I'm going to be
Well,
testing it with another site another domain that I use, but
yeah.
I should say I own now. I haven't used it yet, but
Well, and see, you're doing it different than what I'm doing it because I'm building it right into my WordPress.
yeah.
So
Well,
mine
because
won't
you're just
be,
utilizing WordPress's Activity Hub, right?
yeah. So it'll be, so it won't be a separate thing. It'll be one. My WordPress will be my social media site. You know, it'll be, that'll be what feeds out to, like if you have Mastodon or Friendly or whatever or Pixel Feed on your phone and you're subscribed to me, you'll see the stuff that I post onto my website on your feed.
Yeah.
And then I won't have to post to something different. I'll only post to the one place.
And see, I'm planning on using it for now, at least, mostly just for microblogging,
Yeah.
like like a Twitter replacement, or I'm sorry, an X replacement.
No,
Don't want to
keep
get
that.
sued.
No, dead name it. He he dead names his daughter, so I am going to continue to dead name his company as my personal form of protest.
Oh, that's funny.
And now I don't know the situation. I see, and I keep screwing up and saying his daughter, and I shouldn't do that because I haven't looked enough. Like I don't understand enough of what I know he has a trans child, and I keep saying daughter, and I know I shouldn't do that because I
I
don't.
can't. I don't. I haven't actually. And I almost said I don't care enough, but I don't know enough about his personal family life to know
Yeah,
what I'm supposed to do.
yeah,
I'm
that
just like I don't know.
yeah. I know that he dead names his trans child. Yeah, that's I think proper. He dead names his trans child. And so as my personal form of protest, I'm going to dead name his shitty company. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wish it was better because I actually was one of the few people that really enjoyed Twitter, and it's gone absolutely sideways fast.
Yeah. I almost want to go back and listen to the episode where we had uh, had CT on and see what your thoughts were.
I think I defended Twitter for a while.
Yeah,
But
you
I think
did.
I also said something along the lines of that this was the end of it. I don't know.
You were pretty hopeful.
I was very hopeful.
Yeah.
But once he got a hold of it, he pretty much went full right wing troll, and that was completely unexpected. I thought he
Mm,
was going to treat it like he treats his other properties and tries to actually run them halfway decent. Like I figured he was going to treat it like he treated SpaceX or something like that.
there was kind of an expectation that he was gonna run it into the ground.
Yeah, I know for a fact I was extremely hopeful.
Yeah. I didn't
I was
think it was
proven
gonna be.
completely wrong, but I was extremely hopeful.
Yeah, I didn't think it was gonna be like as bad and as fast as it was, but
I don't think anyone was.
yeah.
I think even the most jaded of us didn't think it was going to get this bad this fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious to see what his plans are for the greater X environment.
He wants WeChat. He wants an
Yeah,
American WeChat where it's an all you can and everything app.
we
So,
we we
and he's
already
even said that.
we already sort of tried that once.
I mean, Facebook tried to do that,
That's
and
exactly what I was going to say. Meta tried
yeah,
and
they had,
realized that it's much easier said than done.
yeah, they had gaming. There's a marketplace, like there's video chatting. Like it had Facebook already has all of that crap built into it, and it's crappy and not good. So,
Yeah,
do you?
not a big fan of where Meta went. Although they've sort of, I'm not gonna say they righted this shit. They didn't right the ship, but it's not sinking like it was. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because they got a little less shitty and they kind of dialed back on the shitty, or that X went so shitty so fast that everyone else just suddenly looks a lot better in comparison.
Well, that's why I'm really, really interested in what's going on with Threads because he threw the whole thing at the metaverse, thinking, "Oh, I want to build this universe thing where everybody can be connected in a like virtual environment," and it didn't work because I think the world didn't really want a virtual environment. You know,
I
it was
don't think the
too.
world. So I think, and this is still my issue with the Fediverse as well, is retraining people and the education of people to understand what your property is and what it's supposed to be is really fucking difficult.
Yeah, I think that's where Threads is going to help. Is
It's
they're they're going to use their Instagram user base to build the biggest step of the network. Like it's already there. The nerds have it. And you think about like the first step of the internet, there was the message boards and there was the first users. It was all nerds in labs that were interconnected using these message boards, talking to each other about science stuff and sharing stuff. And then AOL came out and there was GeoCities. And it was the big thing that kind of connected everybody. And then, like MySpace hit and people were able to kind of like had something easy that was able to connect each other.
So, and this is kind of my I'm not going to say my problem or my issue because it's not really that, because it's not I'm not upset, and I think this got confused, especially talking to people that have listened to his stuff. I am not anti decentralized at all. That's not where my argument stems from. My argument stems from not being anti decentralized. My argument stems from people don't understand it, and it's going to be very difficult for to retrain everyone. Yes, the internet used to be decentralized, but it didn't gain mainstream popularity until it was centralized.
Yeah.
And those of us that, even though those of us that were alive during that time, even a smaller subset remember the internet pre AOL.
Yeah.
Because honestly, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a system that was designed pre AOL, and the only remnant of that system is email.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is Threads, because it's attached to Instagram,
Yeah.
Instagram has a billion users.
Yeah.
So you have one group of people already in a place that will be attached to this, that are coming from a place that will be already be attached to it. And you already have all these other groups that are already attached to it in these other places. You've got your Mastodon, like you have your hundreds or thousands of different Mastodon servers. You have your friendly servers. Uh, there's your Pixel feed and your feed, your feed tube servers and your Lemmy servers. You have all those other servers that are already all connected.
Yep.
And then as like say if let's use this as a crazy example. FeedTube starts to take off. Let's say Vimeo says, "Hey, we can't compete in our silo anymore. Let's convert our system to ActivityPub." So they convert their system to ActivityPub. So you have all of these users on Vimeo who now have their they can all upload to Vimeo, and it'll feed out into the Fediverse. So now you have a whole nother set user base who doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to learn anything new. But then they just become attached to the Fediverse. But then you're like, if you're using Threads, you can be like, hey, I can start watching this video content on my Threads app. You know? Um,
Their problem right now is they're losing daily users and time spent on,
well, that's okay.
and it's
They
in a
they
free fall at the moment.
well, that's because they jumped the gun to get it launched. They launched it with no features
Yeah.
because um they knew X was X was having issues. They they cut down like the limits of how many tweets you could view in a day. Then they made it so you had to log in to view a tweet. And they said, I know we're not ready, let's launch today. You know?
Yeah.
So they
And
did it.
that, and
And they did
that,
it with zero marketing. Zero.
no, I know.
Zero marketing.
But you still go from, regardless if there's zero marketing or not, when you go from 44 million DAU to what, 8 million, and you lose about 1% a day of daily active users, that's not a very healthy metric. And yes, I know that they launched and it sprang up big, but even time spent in app for the daily active users is dropping still.
Yeah.
I mean, they're down to what, about, I think the Gizmodo article that I'm reading, they're saying that by the end of July, the engagement for the average user is 2.9 minutes a day compared to 19 minutes a day when it was first released. So they had an influx. People started using it and then went, yeah, no, and left. And getting those people back, I don't know how easy that's going to be. I'm sure that it will just keep churning, and you know, they're not going to get rid of it. But I think I'm hoping that they're going to be able to fix it, because you know, connecting threads to the entire decentralized Fediverse. I mean, have they started doing that yet? Can I look at
Um,
my friends' threads from from Mastodon or from Lemmy, or are they
mm,
still a walled off garden?
yeah, they're still working on it. So they haven't set out any timelines for anything, but they have set what features they're working on and what ones are prioritized first. So they had like their base features of getting like your following tab going first, getting hashtags working correctly. I think there was like 4 or 5 features that were coming before having ActivityPub enabled. Um, I don't remember what all they were, but then it sounded like that would be one of the big ones. They definitely wanted to have like proper web support as one of them. They want to, like full on web features would be what it was.
And you know, for the average user, that's not necessary. For content creators, that's an absolute must. And
Yeah.
that's what people need to start realizing is that the regular user is very important for accessing and utilizing, but they don't create most of the content that people consume on social media. There's content creators do that, and you have to build a system that's conducive for them. You know, TikTok wouldn't be what it is now if I couldn't upload videos from my computer that I can edit from my computer and upload. If they required me to 100% use my phone, I mean, yeah, they got a shortcut, but I'm also not too intent on giving Tencent my access to all of my media on my phone either,
Yeah.
which is why I don't let the youngest use shortcut.
Yeah.
And and they haven't done anything inherently horrible,
They're,
but
they're also not like the most super trustworthy thing.
no, they're not. And that's the thing is that I don't mind certain companies having access to that stuff because I trust that company to have access with my data. Tencent hasn't proven to me yet that they're trustworthy enough to access my data, especially since it's recently come out that they weren't entirely truthful about the walled off who gets the data where.
Yeah.
I mean, they came out and they made most people that were in Congress look like complete buffoons But not long after that, it came out, oh, yeah, I guess mainland China was actually getting access to all this data. Oops, our bad. We'll go ahead and fix that now. I'm like, no, you just spent all this time convincingly trying to tell everyone that it's a completely separate process, and then suddenly, oops, sorry. You just lost a lot of credibility points with me.
Yeah.
And it's a great platform. It's a great platform for getting a name out there. It's not a great platform if you're a creator and trying to get paid for your work, but it's a great platform to get your name out there. It's what we call it gets your name out there, but it's the only good that it is on a creator standpoint is name recognition and pointing them to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because the creative fund is absolutely insane.
So anyways, Threads is
Yeah, sorry, I digressed pretty badly there.
yeah. Threads is said that once they get through like their big set of features, then they're going to turn on their marketing machine, which means they're going to promote in their Instagram user base.
So this was early access.
Yeah, this is early access.
Which
They
I'm
which is
really
what I
hoping
have,
that it takes off. I
which
really
is
do want it to take off.
yeah, which is what I've been saying since the beginning is they've done zero marketing, Dave. This was because they launched it and everybody went, "Hey, look at this fancy shiny new thing." And then
Yep.
we all went in and went, "Oh, well, it doesn't do nothing yet."
And to
And
be fair to other companies that have tried, like for example Google Plus,
yeah, god damn, I
they
missed
gave
that.
it an 8-year run.
Yeah,
I mean, everyone likes to shit on that. Oh, they just abandoned it. It ran for almost a decade.
yeah,
That's a lifetime in the tech space.
yeah. Threads is gonna do great. It's gonna
I
do
think so.
great.
Well, say what you will about Meta and Facebook and Instagram. They have defied all odds in the longevity category. I'm really curious
I
to see what
know.
Blue Sky is going to do because as much as we like to shit on Twitter, for a while there, Twitter was one of the best social media platforms out there.
I don't
They
know.
went they
I,
went sideways, and I don't like Jack Dorsey as a person.
uh-uh.
I'm gonna
I,
get that out there right now. I don't like him as a person. I don't like Zuckerberg as a person. I love what Meta's doing. I don't like Elon Musk as a person, and he's running X into the ground. I don't like Jack Dorsey as a person. He's kind of
no.
a whack job.
Yeah.
However, he fucking knows what he's doing when it comes to that space. He knew what he was doing with Twitter, and it was really, really good under his tutelage.
I think what he did, I think when he came up with Blue Sky, I think he screwed up by not supporting Activity Pub and helping make changes in that
Yeah,
and
I
creating
think,
his own separate protocol and trying to get that to be another standard.
but I think he has the same mindset that I do of he's not sure if people are ready to jump back into a decentralized system yet.
That's what he made. He made the AT protocol as a direct competitor for ActivityPub, and Blue Sky is the same fucking thing, Dave.
Yeah, I know. But because
It's
no
the
one else
same.
uses it, it's going to become a
No,
centralized system that
there.
other people can attach to. No one else
No, it is.
uses the no one else uses the
There.
protocol.
Yeah, there is. There's multiple. There's already multiple things that use the AT protocol.
Really?
There's not many because
It's garbage compared to Activity Pub. It's not, is it? Well, ActivityPub was embraced by the W3C consortium, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So competing against the fucking people that make everything else or that support everything else, the consortium for an open internet, not gonna happen, I don't think.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. They supported it and took it under their wing and said,
Had he been able to release out before Mastodon. Now I'm not saying that ActivityPub is only came out with Mastodon. I'm not saying that at all. It's been around forever.
yeah,
I'm saying that that was brought to media forefront by Mastodon. The Fediverse was, because
yeah,
it wasn't really that big of a talking point until they released out, and then everyone was like, "What is this? What is this whole thing?" And it became a media highlight focus. In the tech world, we all knew what it was. Outside the tech world and into where everybody else tends to live, that's when people first started learning about this and getting insanely confused by this. Had Blue Sky beaten out Mastodon for media headlines, I think the AT protocol would have had a chance.
yeah.
But because he didn't and he wasn't able to, I don't think it has a chance to go anywhere now.
No.
I
Yeah,
understand
because
he doesn't want to go completely release mainstream until it's quote unquote ready, but he doesn't have the infrastructure to make it ready.
you already have big companies throwing weight behind ActivityPub.
But
You have Meta.
even big companies, it's not a necessarily big company thing. Because I was just thinking about this. The W3, it's about the W3 consortium, and if people don't know what this is, they are the people that help publish the open embracement of what the web
Yeah.
runs on. So like CSS, HTML. I did
The-
W3C get a hold of PHP,
yeah,
or are they
yeah, they
still on
do.
their own?
I think they publish the PHP specs.
And I
I
believe
don't
they also publish JavaScript specs now too, right?
Yeah, I think they publish all of the specs. I don't know if they're all written by them.
So back in, I want to say late 90s, early 2000s, Microsoft tried to compete with a web standard. And that was the ASP, the active server pages. And they had, and you gotta understand, Microsoft in the 90s versus Microsoft now was night and fucking day. Microsoft now has realized that we have Windows and we want to help out every other community now. They understand they have Windows on lockdown as an operating system, and now they want to help prop up everyone that contributes around them now. Back in the 90s, Microsoft was not that.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this off memory because of just being an old shit. But
Hold on. Let me. So the the W3C, it's Worldwide Web Consortium. It exists so that I can be on my Asus computer running Google Chrome, and you can be on your hand-built crazy computer running Microsoft Edge. And the listener can be on their Samsung phone or their Google Pixel phone or their Apple iPhone, and they can be on our website. We can all be looking at the exact same web page. We can all be listening to the exact same podcast. We can be watching the exact same video, and it will look the exact same. It will sound the exact same because it is a web standard, and they publish that standard so that the people that build those things know what it should look like and what it should act like when we build those things. That's what the standards are for. That's why we do those. That's why we shouldn't compete against those standards. We should help build with those standards, and we should help improve on those standards.
Yep.
That's immediately why I dislike AT protocol, because there was already a standard and we could work and support that standard and say, hey, I don't like how this works. What can we do to improve it? And instead he said, hey, I don't like how this works. I'm going to build a competing standard against it. And that's
All right. ASP was
exactly
early
what it
2000s.
says. Yeah.
It is now, it's still used, but now it's a open source framework. So they've flipped around and now they've completely ran it as a open source framework. So ASP.NET is now based on .NET Core, and it's now an open frame or an open source framework. So they've actually switched up, and this is something that's crazy that Microsoft has started doing, is open sourcing a bunch of shit. So at least in the late 90s into the 2000s, their entire, like, multiple people that are high up in Microsoft said that that's one of the things they want to do was completely crush out Linux as a competitor.
Yeah.
And now they've completely switched it around to where, I mean, on my computers, instead of having to run two operating systems, so I used to have to run, I would install in Windows. If I wanted to run Linux, I had to run it as a second operating system, partition off some stuff. I have to reboot my computer to get into my Linux computer side. And then if I need to go back to Windows, I go back. I don't know when WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux, came out, but I can now run Linux alongside and inside of Windows, and there's actually installers, and they work with these different Linux distros to make sure that there's compatibility that runs across between them. Like, Microsoft today is so far different than Microsoft of old. It's insane.
Yeah. They had a good example of what you should do as a business model, and that came from Google and their Chromebooks. The big difference I noticed was Microsoft took a public opinion of wanting to dominate Linux out of existence. Google took a public stance of wanting to make Chromebooks the best possible computer you could use in a school setting.
Yeah,
They didn't.
a school or a web setting.
Yeah.
If your tasks are web based and that's what you do most of the time, there is no better device on the market right now than a Chromebook.
Yep. And they didn't say we want to beat the shit out of Microsoft. We don't want to beat the shit out of a Mac. We don't want to beat the shit out of Linux. They never mentioned a competitor in any of that. They said, look at what we can do. Look at how fast, how simple, and how long we can do this for. Look at the ease of use and look at how capable we made this simple device.
I do have only one problem with the Chromebook system. No. It has nothing to do with it's not, and it's not a technical problem. It's not a technical limitation problem at all. It creates an ungodly amount of e-waste.
Yeah. Yep.
Ungodly amount of e-waste.
I have 3 or 4 of them just sitting in a pile because I don't know what to do with them.
You can't do anything with them. That's the big. I mean, old laptops, as laptops get thinner and smaller and everything else, you can't do much with them anyway either. Which is why I'm thinking if I buy a new laptop, I'm gonna go buy a framework.
Yeah.
Not sponsored.
That's something I saw in the
I'd love to be sponsored, but not sponsored.
I think Chromebooks were going to start doing that too. I saw once was they were going to start doing the modular Chromebook.
I mean, a company could do that because Chrome OS, you can put it on all sorts of shit. So
Yeah.
there's nothing stopping a company from building a framework based. But yeah, framework laptops, you can swap out everything. You can upgrade things. That's why I like my desktop computer so much, is that
Yeah.
I can upgrade the fuck out of it.
Yep.
And then learning and figuring out better and easier ways to connect to it from other computers means that I don't need a super high end uh, laptop anymore.
You know why you can do that, Dave?
Why?
Standards,
Yeah.
hardware standards. You have all the plugs are the same. All the hardware types are the same. You can plug anything into anything.
Yep.
Standards.
But you know, the
I
modern
love
laptop,
them.
everything's soldered is hard soldered. That's why you can't upgrade like you can, like, say, a desktop or
Yeah.
old laptops. You used to be able to swap out your RAM in old laptops.
Yeah. I can
You
do that
can't
with
do that
mine.
anymore.
I can do that with mine. I can do that in my Chromebook actually. If I could get it apart without destroying it.
But you know, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
There are still really good things, but that is my only current complaint about a Chromebook
Yeah. It's a lot of e-waste.
is
But
there's just so much e-waste.
yeah, I think they tried to make them super duper simple, but I did see some more rules coming out of the EU, the European Union, that looks like it will try to eliminate some of that. So
Because a lot
maybe
of
that'll
schools
help.
that adopted it are realizing that they have to replace their fleet every 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's just not, it's cheaper initially, but when you have to,
Yeah, when
and
it's
I don't,
two
I,
hundred
I
dollars a Chromebook and you're buying,
yeah,
1,000 of them or whatever,
but
depending on your
if you're
school
doing that
every
every
year.
2 years, the average iPad lasts 4 to 5 years, and it's twice as much. But in the long term, is it better?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Um, yeah, but an iPad's what, $1,500?
No, 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 not the ones that they're using for schools. No, no, iPads have actually come down quite a bit in price.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the high end studio, because, well, now they have the different classifications of them now too. So like the high end ones that are the studio ones, which is pretty much like buying a fucking Mac M3 or an Air. It's they compete with doing everything you can do on like a on like an Airbook or something. Yeah, those are expensive,
Yeah.
but I was looking at getting a two. Well, I guess it's the two gens back, but I can get a brand new Gen 9 or Gen 8 or Gen 9, I can't remember, iPad for like $230 now, and it's still supported for the next 4 years.
Hmm.
And I was going to do that just because there's a lot of really good drawing apps and a lot of, that's the one for creative people like my youngest is wants to do a lot of the drawing stuff. You know, the Chromebook tablet that she has right now is has some stark limitations on what it can and can't use.
Yeah.
And that's been my biggest struggle with it is like, okay, I want to teach her stuff that can translate over easily over to computers so that when she sits on a computer, she has a fundamental understanding of a UI layout and all that stuff. But nothing runs on the Chromebook platform that can do that.
It's
I
gonna
mean,
it's
it's a
gonna be a
year and a half.
whole
Her tablet thing's a year old or a year and a half old now, but it won't run Premiere Rush, which is the Android version, and her phone won't run it either because it's not quite powerful enough.
Yeah. There's some high-end Chromebooks that you'd have to get to do that. My
But
the one
those compete in price, and Chromebook doesn't. I mean, Chrome OS doesn't, depending on who you buy it from, even Google's stuff, they only support for what, 2 years on the
no,
Chromebook side?
the the Google the Google Chromebook I think had 6-year support.
Oh, they've changed that.
I don't remember specifically, and I'll probably need a fact check on that. That was one of the things that I talked about in the phone call yesterday was that was he brought that up. He was like, sometimes it sounds like you might get sidetracked, like you're texting on your phone or you might be browsing social media or something. And I was like, well, actually, sometimes I'll say something and then I'm like, I think I just said a number, and then I start second guessing myself, and I'm like, I better go fact check myself before I forget. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's
sometimes we do that.
it's it's not a terrible thing, but it's also it's frustrating that the same price of something won't run. And then that's been my biggest frustration with Android as a platform altogether is there hasn't been historically enough tablet space for a lot of these companies to actually produce out something viable for Android when they're doing PC, Mac, and iPad. Because the iPad, love it or hate it, is the standard um for tablets.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yep.
99% of Android tablets out there are, I wouldn't even call them, they're barely better than an Amazon Fire tablet. They have incredibly horrible specs. Any sort of an SoC in there is just it's terrible. And there are a handful that got better, but with Chromebook being separated from Android, that caused some problems because it's not always easy to figure out what's going to run on a Chromebook from Android versus what's going to run natively on Android. And if it's not web based, then it's frustrating.
Yeah.
They need to figure out, Google needs to figure out the chasm between Android and Chrome OS and fix it. They've gotten better. I'm not saying that it's not, you know, it's not better than what it was, but God, it's still terrible.
It's
Unfortunately.
it's getting there. Do you remember that Samsung uh Chromebook
Chromebook that I
use?
sold you
Yeah.
like 5 years ago, or whatever that was.
Yeah. Dude, that thing was freaking amazing.
I loved it. It was Samsung, I believe.
Yeah.
I liked it because of the screen size. It was a 4x3 instead of a
Yeah.
16:9.
Yeah. One of the first things I did was I installed a 3D rendering engine on it, and I was rendering 3D videos.
Yeah. No, you can do a lot of good stuff with Chromebooks. It's
Hmm.
it's in
It's like,
and it's programs not building stuff for any of the Google platform whatsoever.
hmm
And that's not necessarily a knock, except that when you have a seemingly competing specs for building it on, do I build it for Chrome OS or do I build it for Android? Are the high end ones are going to be running Android or are they going to be running Chrome OS? There's no specific standard. I mean, the Pixel Book versus the new Pixel tablet are running two different operating systems. So Google in its own hardware isn't even keeping track and making things consistent across its own hardware platforms.
Well, they
And
run
that's what bugs me.
well, they run Chrome OS with a Android. I don't know if it's exactly a virtual machine, but I think it works like a virtual machine.
But if you were to go app to app, there are stuff that will run on the Android one that won't run on the Chromebook one, and stuff that will run on the Chromebook one that won't run on the Android one because of where the specs were designed for. They're not cross compatible, they're virtually compatible. And that's the problem. They can't be consistent with their own hardware. Why are companies going to dump the money to try to build higher end stuff for it?
What ones aren't compatible with what?
Half of Photoshop Suite won't run on one and will run on the other.
What
Um,
won't run on
Nothing.
what?
Affinity got tired of trying to figure out what the specs were, so they won't even build anything for anything Google related because it was too much of a nightmare. And they're honestly the biggest competitors to.
I run
Um,
some of the I run some of the Adobe suite on my Chromebook.
yes, and some
Some
of
of
it will
it,
run on a Chromebook. Most of it will run on an Android phone,
yeah,
but
most of it runs good on an Android phone. Some of it runs okay on my Chromebook, but my Chromebook doesn't have a lot of power, so it kind of struggles.
so
But
that's
has it has most of them enabled, and supposedly more of them are coming.
and that's been the mantra for 2 years or more. Well, that was they were saying that it should work pretty well and most of it will come when I sold you that Chromebook.
Well, they've been slowly adding more and more of them,
Yeah.
and I have like Photoshop and Lightroom and Illustrator. I don't remember what all I have. And like
Yeah,
they
no,
add
some
some and they're
some
not.
of it some of it will work, some of it won't. And it's the same on the
Yeah.
Android side, and it's not the same stuff from Android over to Chromebook
Yeah.
necessarily.
Well, they they add stuff and they add new features, and it's a slow rollout because they probably don't have a full team there, but
Yeah,
they they know there's an
it's
importance there.
frustrating. But
Yeah.
what Photoshop alternative will run on a Chromebook or an Android?
Oh,
That's a full scale.
we could do a whole episode on that because I actually have a handful of different programs that I use.
We should do an episode on alternatives that run on either Chromebook or Android.
And Windows and web-based
Well,
because I have a
Windows, there's
slew.
unless it's built by Apple, there's that's pretty much an open lane crossover.
Yeah,
I mean, Procreate is probably the only thing, but even then, it won't run on most MacBooks. That's like almost an iPad only thing.
yeah,
And Adobe is kicking Procreate's ass at the moment. So
yeah,
yeah, we should do an alternatives what runs across platforms, what runs, because I don't use. I might end up switching up and switching to some Adobe stuff, but I don't as a primary day to day usage. I don't use anything Adobe. I only have recently because school's paying for it.
yeah. I don't.
Though I
I don't.
did figure out
Yeah.
that by homeschooling, I can apply for and get the student and like an education discount for the Adobe suite. And it's
Mm,
like 50%.
nice.
Like I won't spend $60 a month for Adobe suite, but I'd be tempted at 30.
Yeah,
So I'm just trying to figure out, as she's learning stuff and she wants to learn more and more, my biggest my biggest thing at the moment is, okay, what's going to translate over, there are things that will work that you can learn, and okay, yeah, you can draw on this, but standards are so important, especially if she decides she wants to make a career out of it. As bad as it is, if you're going to go work for someone else anywhere in the creative space, you have to know Adobe systems. There are other programs that will do stuff, but if you're doing anything collaborative, it's got to be Adobe.
Yeah.
It's slowly changing, but it's still there are such things as some things that are standard.
Yep.
And unfortunately, and especially now that Adobe is embracing a lot of AI tools and building them in,
Yeah.
it's I'm seriously debating going back to Adobe just because of those AI tools are so amazing. Generative fill is one of the craziest things out there. We could do an entire episode on built-in AI in Adobe products now that I've gone through those classes, because holy shit, that was phenomenal. Stuff that would take me 30 minutes to an hour to do, you can do in seconds. Like replacing a sky, including shadows and color and like recolor grading the original thing to go from like a bright blue sky to like an evening sky with all the oranges. You know how everything else kind of gets somewhat orangey, and you can definitely tell when someone's just scoped out the sky and replaced it, and everything else looks like white light from middle of the day, and then the sky is like dusk.
Mm-hmm.
It will detect out the sky. It'll auto run through the colors that the new sky that you've placed in is, and then it will automatically change all of the hues and saturations for the rest of the image to match the color of the sky and the mood and the lighting and everything else. And it will all do that non-destructively in masks and layers in about less than 2 minutes by just clicking a couple of buttons.
Mm.
It's gotten crazy good of what it can do. It completely blew my mind. So, I don't know. But we've gone way off the rails of where we started.
Yeah. I
But yeah,
almost don't even
we
remember
should
where we started.
do. We started with threads and Mastodon and web standards, and
And Pool
I mean
Boys.
it's all we've all stayed tech like we always do.
We started with Sexy Pool Boys.
Well, yeah, we kind of did that. Anyway, guys, we'll see you guys all next week.
Yep. Well, we'll be back. Later.
Bye.